event providers, as well as Victoria University Polytechnic, who is the proud gold sponsor of the Wyndham Learning Festival 2020. I'd like to thank VU Polytechnic for supporting the festival once again this year, particularly in this difficult year. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Jasmine Hill to say a few words. Jasmine is the newly appointed Learning City portfolio holder, and we are honoured that this is Jasmine's first official event. Councillor Jasmine Hill.
Thank you so much, John. Are you guys able to hear me well? Hello? Can people hear me well? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you, Jasmine.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jasmine. Firstly, I would like to also acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built. We pay our respect to the elders, past, present, emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal people here today. The footprints of the Kulin Nation are found across the landscape of Wyndham. I would also like to acknowledge my fellow councillors, colleagues, Mayor, Councillor Adele Hekditch, Councillor Jenny Barrera, Councillor Heather Marcus, Councillor Mia Shaw, Councillor Sahana Ramesh, and Councillor Susan McIntyre, and distinguished guests. I'm delighted to be here today at the signature event of the 5th Wyndham Learning Festival, especially as it is my first event as an elected councillor representing council and as newly appointed Learning City portfolio holder. As Wyndham is one of the fastest growing cities in Australia, our vision is to create a socially inclusive community that enjoys high levels of learning and employment. A strong learning community, it's a more resilient community that can adapt to change, learn new skills, and take advantage of opportunities. The theme for this year's Learning Festival is healthy learning, healthy lives, particularly with the impacts of the global pandemic reverberating around the world. A positive approach of the global pandemic, a positive approach in the midst of so much uncertainty is to individually focus on learning and develop new skills that will help strengthen the mind and the body, and at the same time, increase employability. The Learning Festival would not be possible without the partnership and collaboration that occurs between Wyndham City and Wyndham Community and Education Centre. It is a wonderful example of community and council working hand in hand to achieve positive outcomes for our community. On behalf of Council, we express sincere thanks to the Wyndham Community Education Centre for once again leading the Wyndham Learning Festival and bringing learning to the forefront in our city. A festival of this magnitude involves many people and many hours of work. I would like to recognize the enthusiasm, dedication, and devoted Wyndham Learning Festival Working Group that is made up of council staff and Wyndham Community Education Centre. This true partnership has developed and grown the Wyndham Learning Festival to be a permanent feature of Wyndham's calendar of events and now an entrenched part of the Wyndham landscape. Importantly, positioning our city as a leader in learning. A special thank you to Victoria University Polytechnic, our gold sponsor of this year's festival. We appreciate and are grateful for your ongoing support. As a local teacher, I am passionate about education and providing the opportunities for continued learning and developing through all stages of life. I'm looking forward to hearing and learning from our esteemed guest, Clare Bowditch, this afternoon, who will no doubt have many live learnings to impart. Please enjoy the event. I'll hand over the time to you, Mr. NC.
Thank you, Councillor Jasmine Hill. Really appreciate, it's great to hear your passion for lifelong learning. So now finally, just before I introduce Clare, just a little bit of housekeeping. Note that this event is being recorded, and a reminder to keep your mic on mute and your camera turned off. We've had almost 200 registrations for today, so do feel free to say hello in the chat and tell us where you're from. Or during the event, use the chat if you have any comments or questions for Clare. Your questions will be collated and we will endeavour for Clare to answer them all later in the session. Also later on, for one song, we will invite you to turn your cameras on if you wish, but stay on mute. Watch out for this later in the event. So now to introduce our special guest, Clare Bowditch. Clare is an ARIA award-winning musician, educator, broadcaster, actress, storyteller, author, business owner, partner, and mother of 3. I'm exhausted just saying all of that. But that's not all. Clare is also the founder of a social enterprise, Big Hearted Business, which teaches artists about business and business people about creativity. Clare's recent book, Your Own Kind of Girl, is a national best-selling memoir about the stories we tell ourselves and what happens when we believe in them. It won the coveted Australian Book Industry Award for New Writer of the Year 2020. And just to let you know, Wyndham Libraries have copies of Clare's books available to borrow in various formats, including digital. And if you'd like to buy your own copy and support our local retailers, have a look in Robinson's Bookshop at Pacific Werribee or Dimmicks on Station Street in the Werribee CBD. Now I'll hand over to Clare, who'll tell stories from her own life, sing, answer questions, and help us all tame our inner critic. Clare Bowditch.
Ah, this is so exciting. Thank you so much, John. It worked. Here I am. How lucky I am to be with you. Thank you. Beautiful job. And John, you said that list exhausted you. I think you've forgotten I'm very, very old. So I've had a long time to do all those things. Hello and welcome to everybody who's had the, who has the time to come back inside on this beautiful day and do a little bit of learning with me. My name's Clare Bowditch, and just before we launch in, I'm just going to fiddle with my view here. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. All right, good. Sweethearts, I just want to acknowledge that I am broadcasting today from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land upon which I speak today, to the elders past, present, emerging, and to all First Nations people who are here with us today. And it takes, you know, such a lot of effort and energy and so much goodwill to be able to do what we're able to do together today. So just before we launch into, I know that John's mentioned quite cleverly and correctly that for this format today, we're going to have our cameras off and our mute on. But before we turn them off for good, like I'm going to have an hour with you today and we're going to do quite a bit of dense learning. But before we launch in, do you want to just have 1 sec where you go down to the bottom left and you turn on your video just for a second and we give each other a little bit of a hello. Okay, fantastic. I can see you, darlings. Thank you. I can see Lyndall. I can see, oh, this is like being on Romper Room. I can see Emma. I can see Lauren. I can see Aaron. I can see Austin. I can see Kerry. I can see lots of sweethearts, Emma, and I can see lots of sweethearts whose names I can't see. Mariana, hello up there. I can see Rhonda. I can see Susan Scott and Lily and BJM and Shing. Lovely to have you all here, and I'm looking forward to this very precious time with you. So get comfy. Hi, Denise. Hi, Heather. I know some of you will be watching afterwards as well. You're welcome to do that if the good people of the Wyndham Learning Festival allow you to. But I'll give you a kiss for now, and I'll see you, your little faces at the end. But just so you know, Steph, I can see you there, and Jack, I can see you with your little one on your lap. So I'll see you again. After you have learnt what is going to be, I'm hoping, one of the most useful skills of your life. In the spirit of healthy learning and healthy living, I'm going to teach you today how to tame your inner critic. And I'm going to do that, my darlings, through stories, through songs, through research, which I'll try and weave in there, and through practical application. So I hope you've got a pen and paper. Good. Okay, excellent. Fantastic. All right, I'm just changing my view here again. Don't forget, you can ask me anything. You can ask me anything because I am someone who is very much dedicated to lifelong learning. I'm passionate about it. In fact, you know, a big congratulations also to Councillor Jasmine Hill. Beautiful to hear you speak, and I'm quite honoured to be here on the first time that you've made a public proclamation. You've got a talent for it. But you mentioned before that we couldn't really do this without the hard work and the generosity of those who sponsor and those who come together. And one of those sponsors, major sponsor being Victoria University Polytechnic. And I had this memory of my childhood from the man who, you know, I was very lucky to be born in this country where we get access to education. Very, 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 very lucky to have parents who encouraged education. One of those parents was a man called Ian. And I had this fond memory of being back at the back there at what used to be called Footscray Institute of Technology, FIT. My father was senior lecturer in taxation for quite a few years, and during school holidays, we would drive out from Sandringham, where I grew up, all the way to Footscray. It wasn't really that far, and I remember having, like, it was pretty fancy. I would have like lunch in the cafeteria there. I get to sit in the back of lectures and try and keep quiet while my dad was learning. So I just wanted to just say thanks as well for all the support that you're doing here today. I'm trying to get on the various views, John, and I just keep getting your face good and big, which is great. I like it. It's a good face, but I'm going to sort of ignore this screen and just talk directly to you here. You know, lifelong learning. So I've mentioned it a few times already, but this commitment that that I have to lifelong learning was made, thank you, John, was made a little bit harder during lockdown, because one of the things that I missed terrifically was my local library. You can see that I'm a bit of a bookish kind of a person, and it was closed, and it was the thing that I was most excited about when lockdown opened the world up. And I was really amazed to hear that in your province, in your hood, you have 5 libraries. 5 libraries. So I hope you've been making the most of them, you lucky, lucky ducks. Before we launch in, I want to ask you a question, if you don't mind. I need to know that you're here. I need to know that you can see me and that you can hear me and that you're up for learning with me today. So I'll ask you a question. In the comments, could you just tell me one little thing that you missed when we're in lockdown? Because I know some of you have had mixed experiences of that. It can actually be quite overwhelming to be back in the opened up world. But just write in the comments for me. Tell me your name. Tell me the hood that you live in, because we're from all over. There's someone here from Brisbane too. G'day, Brisbane. Don't know how you got the link, but you're very welcome to be here. Cheeky monkey. And you won't know what we're talking about, Brisbane, when you talk about lockdown, but just write in there. Tell me a little bit about what you missed, what you were longing for while we're in lockdown, and your name. And I'll have a little read out. There's no I in my name, Claire. So if you're trying to at me, I won't get it unless you spell it C-L-A-R-E. All right, great. So we've got here Austin. Austin's from Footscray. Thank you, Austin. I can't see what you missed, but I'm going to say maybe you missed Footscray. Jenny missed the MSO Live. Oh, my gosh. But how beautifully did they do bring us online with them. Meg missed swimming. Meg is, you know, you're one of the fitter of us. You're ready for summer in a way that I'm not, but thank you, Meg. Rhonda, yes, the 5 amazing libraries in Wyndon, including the Julia Gillard Library in Tarnate. Amazing. So Lauren from Hoppers Crossing missed Mum's hugs. Oh my gosh, me too, mate. Me too, very much. Steph missed the theatre. You're a learned bunch, aren't you? Culturally diverse. Lyndall exploring new places. That was a hard one, wasn't it? My darling Marty husband, that's what I call him, husband Marty Brown. Yeah, he the first thing he did was sort of reappear with hiking boots on and just run basically as soon as the doors opened. Okay, beautiful. I can see so many of you are here. Just that thing of being together, hugging your friends, loving each other, large events, and all the people singing in harmony. Oh my gosh, Steph, I hear you. We yeah, that thing of we can't actually easily sing in harmony online because of an issue with latency. So in a little delay. Okay, sitting in cafes. Emily missed the freedom to do what you wanted. And Will missed band rehearsal. Me too. Just not the same online, is it? Seeing friends and lots of exploring. So I can tell it's great to have read that because now I know you really are here. It's not just my imagination. Also, I get to see the things that we have in common. When we're talking about freedom and the freedom to be who we are and the freedom to express who we are, that's really one of the themes of what we've been learning today as we're talking about how it is we can find our voice. Your voice is there, but when we talk about finding our voice, some of you might have thought, oh, we're coming for a singing lesson. No, not exactly, but the skills that I will teach you today through story and through practical application are really about making sure that you have access to your voice, the courage that you need to bring your voice to the world. And that sounds a little airy-fairy, but I'll tell you sincerely, it is the skill upon which many careers are built. It's a skill upon which much personal growth is built. And it's a skill that we need if we're going to fiercely pursue our ability to learn in this world. Yes, I will sing for you. Yes, I will. And just a reminder again that you really can ask me anything. As a lifelong learner, and I really mean that, as someone who is always, every single day of my life, trying to learn something new in an active way, you can ask me anything, because if I can be useful to you in any way, this is precious time we get to be together. We might not be able to see each other again for a little while, but if you have anything, and it can be about the things that I wrote in my book around body, around mental health, around well-being, it can be things around career, it can be things around anything really, and we will get to that at the end. But have the courage to get in there in the chat and type in, "Dear Claire, I've always wanted to ask you, was Asha Keddy's nice in real life?" Yes, she was lovely, by the way. Did Dr. Patrick really die? No, he didn't. It was just a TV show. And what was Leonard Cohen? Like, you can ask me anything you like, all right? But pop it in there and I will get to it. All right. And some of you might have heard a few of my stories before because you might have read the book. Can I just get a little shout out in the comments, a little hoy from anyone who has read Your Own Kind of Girl by me? Why is this relevant today? Because in this story, thank you, Emma, I'm telling the story of how, in learning to tame my inner critic and find my voice, I was able to do more of what I wanted in the world. But the truth is, you see this little sweetheart here, and I can say that now. That's me when I was a little one. I had a confidence in there, but there were lots of other things in there, that thoughts, feelings, habits, and emotions and experiences that really held me back. And so I'll just say that up front to say, when we talk about these things and when I teach these things, I do talk about some little bit heavy things, not even a little bit heavy. We talk about grief, we talk about mental health, we talk about the things that we do with our bodies and the habits that we have. So those things are there too, and we'll make sure if anyone is feeling particularly sensitive or so on, I'll never just leave you there. There'll always be resources available at the end or any of the way through. And I'll try not to swear too much. I know some of you might have children in the room, but it can happen from time to time. So let's start at the very beginning. Anyone? A very good place to... I can't hear you, but I know you sang. Okay. I am Clare Bowditch. I am from the Bowditch clan. I'm the youngest of 5. We were all born 18 months apart. We say 2 years, but my mum corrected me when we went through the manuscript together. 18 months apart. Thank you very much. And I was very fortunate to be brought up in a home where I was loved. Mentioned that already. And I had a roof over my head and I had access to education. And all of these things are blessings, but we also had in our family real loss and trauma. So I was brought up in what was a pretty normal environment. Sandringham, Dad was everything was pretty normal for the early part of my life. But if we're going to talk about our inner critic and how it develops and where it develops, we need to at some point go back into that personal part of our story where the cracks got in a way, when we started for a moment to think of ourselves ill, to not see the cute little person we were, but instead to see our faults, the ways that we're wrong, the ways that we don't fit in. And that can happen for a number of different reasons. And realistically, it's really just about the fact that we have a really clever brain that wants us to survive. But sometimes it can be quite loud in some of us. And my inner critic, that voice of self-criticism, of self-doubt and so on, in me became very loud early, really around the time that my darling sister Rowena, 2 years older than me when I was 3 and she was 5, was diagnosed with a mysterious illness that had no known name and no cause and no cure. Rowena moved into the Children's Hospital for, observation, and she was finally diagnosed with an illness that was quite a bit like MS, but that is where she lived for 2 years, there at the Royal Children's Hospital. How lucky we are again to have this city of Melbourne with resources like that. And she lived in there a very full life, but she was paralysed from the neck down. She was on the life support machine, and a lot of our childhood was spent in there with our beautiful Rowena. She lived in there for what they now say is that she has a bit of a record for being in there for the longest amount of time of any child, because you don't really stay in intensive care for very long. You go to other places. So she lived in there from the age of 5, 6, and she passed away when she was 7. And I think without going into too much detail, you can have a clear understanding of the impact that might have on a family, and the admiration I have for my parents for holding that together. Many families, when someone dies, the families fracture, and that's actually a very common experience because the grief is so big. My parents were fortunate to like each other, to have that basis there, and to have a faith. So they're really devout Catholics, all right? And we know the very, so much imperfection, obviously, with religion. For my parents, this was an anchor, and they had probably the best that Catholicism can offer. They had faith, and they held it together. They held us together, and I held myself together as much as I could, but there was so much going on. Okay, so one of the things that I became aware of really at that age was this voice of what I now know is that voice of anxiety, that fear that what had happened to my sister might happen to me, that fear that I would, not be able to save her, save my parents, and all of those very normal, natural thoughts that children in grief and in trauma do feel and do take in. And they were so big, and I didn't want to make a fuss, and that we weren't really of an age. It was sort of 1980. We didn't really talk about these things then. So that for me was really an example of one of the first times I became aware of that voice of self-doubt and that voice of insecurity. In the Tame Your Inner Critic framework, we call that the time where we are spotting. We spot that voice of the inner critic. But of course, at that stage, I had no framework to understand that I didn't have those thoughts and feelings and that anxiety and that fear because there was something wrong with me. I had it because, like you, I have a good brain. And my brain was saying, this is pretty intense, man. We've got to hold it together. All right. So I want to ask you a question now. Am I the only person in this room? You don't have to put in the comments. I'm just going to get you pen and paper. Am I the only person in this room who've had that very loud voice of the inner critic? And I'll give you some examples of how it can play out. For me, it really played out with, there was this sort of feeling that there was something wrong and not quite right. And I would do anything I could to reassure myself. So as a kid, I went to a really clever way to reassure myself, which was through food. And I became a kid who ate a lot And I also became a kid who was physiologically wired to hold on to weight, and I became a fat kid. And for me, that anxiety that there was something wrong with me because I was too big, and I was also really tall, was really, really loud. I couldn't, maybe in your example, you might have a similar example. You might have felt that you were never quite right. You might have felt that you were left out of a team, or that you were shamed in some way or couldn't sing. You know, that voice of self-doubt. When you go, for example, to ask someone on a date, or you might put up your hand to have, you know, throw your hat in the ring for an experience at work where you have more responsibility, or any of those sort of scary things where we might actually change our lives for the better. These can be times when that voice of self-doubt gets in the way. I used to get it before I went onto stage. That was pretty intense, actually. Through this technique, though, of learning to tame my inner critic, I was able to, fortunately, get a sense around that. So why don't we start at number one? I'll just give you, so step number one, it's really a 4-step process, okay? I'll try and simplify it for you. The first step is about learning to spot your inner critic hiding in the woodlands of your mind. So all the ways it presents itself, you know, that tricky, annoying, it can be extreme through panic attacks. It can be mild just through apathy or lethargy or what's the pointness. But see if you can have a little explore with your own pen and paper about some of the times where you have felt the loudness of your inner critic, where it got in the way, where it stopped you. How does it present itself? What are the common stories that you tell yourself, about why your band won't succeed, or why you can't wear that thing, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Have a little write there. Okay. Good, good, good. Good. Keep it rolling. Keep writing if you can. Step number one, spotting your inner critic in the woodlands of your mind. We think this stuff is mysterious, but I think sometimes we forget that the way we feel is very, very much a result of the way we think. And the reality is we don't have a say about that first thought that we think. In the human mind, and I'm going to simplify neuroscience, this particular part of neuroscience for you here. Obviously, I'm not a neuroscientist. And I have great respect for those who are. I'm not a scientist at all, but I'm a person with a brain, and I've had to learn to manage it. So the human brain really has a higher brain and a lower brain. Okay, the lower brain is that survival brain that's been passed across the species. It's the reason we've survived. You know, it's the one that says, run, there's a tiger, you're about to be eaten. Or it's the one that says, this situation is quite dangerous, I'm going to get out of here. It's the one, that part of our brain that sniffs the berry and goes, I don't think that's a berry, that's poisonous. You know, if our ancestors really relied on that part of our survival brain, and that comes across, and it's still really strong in us, even though we're modern humans with lots more checks and balances. So that is that first thought. For me, that was that thought that really came up a lot around my body, and it really came up a lot around my career. So if you fast forward in my life, I always wanted to be a singer. I loved singing, but I didn't know that people like me, in my story, you know, my big story of what was in the way was my size and how I was different from other people, and how I was too great. You know, I had a lot of coming to terms with what had happened to my sister, and quite a bit of anxiety as a teenager. I thought those things stopped me from being able to have a career. You know, so they were the places that my worry mind, my inner critic, would say to me, well, I don't think so, Claire. I don't think so. I think it's probably best that you just take it easy and sit in the back and keep quiet and just be small. I tried that. Have you ever tried that? Works a little bit sometimes. But inside all of us, there are these big, fat dreams, these hopes and desires about who we're going to be in the world, the difference we're going to make, and what we're going to do with our one wild and precious life. Spotting your inner critic. It's the most important step until the next step, all right? So we'll just spend a little bit more time there. My awareness of my inner critic came on me later in life. It came on me in my early 20s. But when I was 19, there were always signs of it there. I dropped out of uni, gone in the wrong course, dropped out, gone traveling, lost jobs, had breakups. And I was in a little bit of a state when my darling auntie offered me a job over in Footscray at Martin Dawes Telecommunications in a call centre. Okay, anyone else here ever had a job in a call centre? Give me a shout out. Yep. All right, let's see. Looking in the comments now. All right, here we go. Anyone else ever had a job in the call centre? Can't see your comments for some reason. Been disabled on my screen. Oh, there we go. Yep. No, John's had a bit of, yeah, there we go. John's been, yeah, good. Okay. Market research. Emily understands. Good afternoon, Martin Dawes Telecommunications. My name's Claire. How can I help you? I was quite good at my job because I really care about human beings. I really give a shizer, as probably you do too. And I wanted to be good at it. But sometimes I get so bored and restless. And that part of me that was calling for me to write songs and be a bit more like my hero, Jeff Buckley, never quite shushed. Good afternoon, Martin Dawes Telecommunications. My name's Claire. How can I help you? One day, I was told that if I kept up this good work and worked hard, I would one day possibly become a team leader. Good afternoon, Martin Dawes Telecommunications. My name's Claire. How are you? And I thought that sounded pretty good because at least I had some stability there. My life had been a bit chaotic before this. Good afternoon, Martin Dawes Telecommunications. And I got quite bored of doing that every day. And I started answering the phone like this. Good afternoon, Martin Dawes Telecommunications. My name's Candy Pants. How can I help you, sir, madam, with your mobile phone device? I didn't mean any harm, but it just helped me and my friend Georgie get through the day. All right. And I did my job well till that one day when I answered the phone in a similar manner and I heard a sound that went. Do you know what that sound is? Anyone know what that sound is? Your call may be monitored for customer service and training. If you don't want your call monitored, please let the team leader know. That's the sound of my beautiful team leader listening into the call. And she took me inside and she gave me a tap on the shoulder and she called me over and she said, I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Please don't fire me. This is the only job, the only thing going for me, please. She said, calm down, calm down, calm down. We're not going to fire you, Claire. You're good at your job and you can stay. I realized that was an oversight, but she said, can I say something though? Has anyone ever told you that you might be destined for a career in the creative arts? Oh, Helen. Oh, Helen. Come now, I said. Don't be ridiculous. People like me don't get to do things like that. My voice of my inner critic was so loud and I hadn't quite spotted it yet. I thought it was the truth. What about you and all those stories that you tell yourself about the things that you're never going to be able to do? Your dreams, your big fat hopes, go back to uni or get that job, or maybe even put a deposit on a house one day, or travel to France, or become a lawyer at the age of 50. I have a friend who did that. All those things, those big fat dreams that you have, or even small fat dreams, just write a couple of them down. I had written a couple down. I wrote a lot down. I wanted to write a novel, make beautiful music, act in the theatre with inspiring humans, learn a language, run like the wind, help people fit in, travel to every country, make $1 million, smile when my children have babies, make the heart my home, inviting and warm. I wanted an amazing life and I did not know how to start. I did not realize then that what was holding me back was in fact not some external voice or, force of, or my bad luck or whatever it was. It was the stories I was telling myself about myself and believing. We don't get to pick the first thought, the one that says, blah, 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 stay safe, stay small. But our higher brain allows us to pick the second thought. And one night, after possibly a few too many shandies, and it can happen, ladies and gentlemen and friends, it can happen. Yes, I made a crazy decision. The voice of my higher brain was so loud that night that, look, I thought, stuff this, when you've had enough, stuff this, I'm going to do something about this. I quit my job at the call center. I booked a ticket to London with no money and no preparation and a broken heart. And my parents were slightly worried. And I said, don't worry, I've got this. And off I went to London, to Earl's Court, where I promptly fell into what can only now be called a major depression. Did I know it at the time? Did I present like other people present with depression or anxiety? No, I thought I had a virus. A virus. I felt shaky on the inside, had racing thoughts, I couldn't sleep. I might have had a little virus because I did also have a sniffly nose and a few other things. And all of a sudden, after struggling all my life with my weight, I just couldn't eat. And that, my friends, was a sign that I was really unwell. I went to the doctor after 3 months in London. I was living in a backpackers, and she said to me, sweetheart, has it ever occurred to you that you might be a bit depressed? And I said, oh, don't be ridiculous, doctor. People like me don't get depressed. She said, I think you should probably go home to your parents and let them take care of you for a while. Now, I'm paraphrasing what really was quite a complex situation. And I am one in four of us who are here today, possibly more, who at some stage in our lives will experience an acute episode of mental ill health. And that was mine, friends. I'm very fortunate to have not had to go back to this space because of the things that I learned there and the help that I got there. Okay, it's not that I don't have my ups and downs, absolutely do, but I never had to go back to that spot where I went home and that voice of the inner critic was so loud that I wasn't really sure how to keep going on. So for me, that experience showed me, forced me to understand what happens in an anxious mind, really physiologically what happens in an anxious mind. And that learning didn't come easily, okay? I thought my life was over and there was no real hope for me. Again, I hadn't yet realized that that voice of the inner critic, that voice of self-doubt, of anxiety, of fear, is actually something that we can manage and control quite simply through the application of some alternative thoughts, okay? Because our thoughts very much create our feelings. And also to get an environment where I had parents who I could move back in with them, and I lived a really quiet life for quite a while. And I wasn't sure what my next step would be because I didn't know what was wrong with me. But I had a great therapist who helped me understand that although I'd had a breakdown, I could alternatively turn it into a breakthrough. I said, what? I was hardly talking at the time. I go in and see this therapist and just pretty much go hi and then go, ah, and just cry for 40 minutes. He was one of those, it was quite awkward really. But slowly, I learned some techniques. And one of the most powerful techniques I learned was simply through reading a book. I was at that point where I was quite desperate to try anything. I really wasn't leaving the house very much and my world had become very, very small. The voice of the inner critic was so loud that I wasn't sleeping and I lost half my body weight. So again, I just wanted to give you an idea of really the situation because I speak about it openly now and I'm fortunate to be able to say that I did make a full recovery, but I want you to have an understanding that if you too experience panic attacks or so on, there's always hope. And my hope really came through reading a very simple book by a woman called Dr. Clare Weeks. And the book was called Self-Help for Your Nerves. Or as she would say, because she was born in the 1920s and she was quite an old-fashioned lady and quite an old lady by the time that I came to her book. There's a little picture of her on the front. And she spoke like this. And I listen to her audiobooks too. They're on YouTube if you want to listen to them and you can buy them. That's probably a better idea legally. Hello, this is Dr. Clare Weeks. And if you have been suffering from what she called nervous tension, fear not, I'll show you the way through. So she had this really reassuring voice. And as a cynic of the 90s, I just wasn't quite sure if this is going to be able to help me. But guess what? It did. Her technique was called face, accept, float, and let time pass. FAFL. All right. So FAFL is what I call it. And if you need more information about that, again, I'll just point you in the direction of reading the book Self-Help for Your Nerves. It's really, really useful. But through practicing her techniques and learning to spot that voice of anxiety and just float through it, I was able to make that first step in the journey to taming my inner critic. But the second step is really important. And we're going to move quite quickly now. Okay. Second step, which I detail in here in this little book, was about reading a Buddhist text. I was trying to meditate, as you do. Anyone else in here meditator? Anyone else here not a gifted meditator, not naturally gifted at that? I was trying my best, but my mind was still really busy and I still had insomnia. So I wasn't concentrating terribly well, and I just get overwhelmed by all the thoughts. Jack Cornfield had a book called A Path with Heart, and I was trying to do, he's a Buddhist monk who, you know, lived in the mountains and came down and lived in New York. Beautiful, beautiful meditation, beautiful, beautiful chap. But I read his book called A Path with Heart, and it said I should try to do something which he called naming the demons, having thoughts, you know, name them, sit quietly, blue sky, love, 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 or lust, 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 or fear, fear, fear. You're supposed to name what you're feeling. I just felt like shit, is the truth of it. And I couldn't decide what I was naming. Every time I tried, like, what is that? Is that love or lust or fear or anxiety? What is that feeling? I decided to just give my name of that bad feeling, that anxious feeling, a name. And I called it, for no reason other than I knew no one with this name, I called it Frank. Okay, Frank, just a name. And each time that voice, that fear came up, that sort of, that feeling of, no, you can't do it, I would tell that voice where to go. For me, I used this language. I mean, ideally, we don't want to be pushing away that voice all the time, but sometimes you just have to in order to get through the day or the experience. So I told Frank to F off. Let's call it flip off. I'd say, flip off, Frank. And it was just a little game that I played. But again, this is about using your creative imagination in order to dismiss that voice of self-doubt, to tame your inner critic. So now here's a challenge. I hope that's clearly explained. I'll be on Instagram. You can DM me later if you need some clarification that you don't have time today. I want you to give that voice of self-doubt a name. Play with me here. You could call it Calamity Jane. That's step number 2. We're naming the inner critic. Okay, we've spotted the inner critic. When does it show up? Now we're going to name it. Okay, so the stories that it tells you and when they show up, what are you going to call it? How are you going to tell it to go away? That's step 3. How do we dismiss it? All right, so it could be, I've heard all sorts of ones. Firstly, name it. You might call it Blee Blue or Smarty Pants or Mean Girl, or it might be the name of a teacher who put you down when you were younger. Or it could be something playful, a character, Maleficent. Or like I said, I've got one, there are now 50,000 people who've downloaded the Audible book, Tame Your Inner Critic. There are many, many people who've tried this technique and it's very, very useful and very, very simple. So name your inner critic. I named mine Frank, you can borrow that. And then decide on a way that you're going to tell it to sit in the corner politely. So it could be Sally off, Sally. It's got to be playful, otherwise it's too serious. And that's often the problem. We're in that sort of serious funk. All right. So have you done that? Can I have a shout out? Has anyone named their inner critic and given it a way to go away? So it can be go away, POQ, get in the corner, shush now, Sally, whatever it is, okay? Cack off, Karen, you'll find your way, okay? So give it a try, guys. Can I have a little comment? If anyone there, just a little tip, if you've been able to name your inner critic and call it anything, okay? Move on, Myrtle, that's great. Awesome, we're getting some now. Keep them rolling, please. What are you going to name your inner critic and how will you tell it to go away? And I want to force you to do this now so that you actually get to go this afternoon and try it. POQ, Calamity Jane, that's a nice one. Not now, Muriel, lovely. Now, when is this useful, this technique useful? Well, in my own life, it was useful on the day I gave birth when that voice of self-doubt, you can't do it. I said, fuck off, Frank. Excuse my language. Flip off, Frank. Or FOF. You know, it's really nice to put it in a little acronym. Bob off blob, that's a nice one, could be Bob, B-O-B. Not now, Muriel, could be you know, just find your playful way to quickly call in this technique, because what it does is use the voice of the, you know, lower brain, and this high brain jumps up and just pops it down from it. It's like there's the pop-up toaster that the self-doubt thought, and this technique just allows it to go like that. Like I said, I'm no psychologist. I'm absolutely not a psychologist, but with Dr. Charlotte Keating together, our Tame Your Inner Critic audiobook on Audible, she really explains that this is a simplified form of CBT. So I want to hear from you, not just today, but in the future, about where you might have tried this. Is everyone clear on the technique? Do you have any questions about it? So what we've done now is 3 of the 4 steps. We have started to spot the stories of our inner critic. Okay, we've named our inner critic. We've tamed our inner critic by working out a way to tell it to go away. So bob off, buzz off, bleed blue, or whatever that is. And now I just want to remind you of the 4th step, which is really simple as well. And you're going to perhaps go away and try this in your own time and do a little writing exercise and spend some time with this, because it's really useful. And I've used it for the past 20 years, 45 now, 20 odd years. How can you quickly bring in that voice of the inner champion? You know what the inner critic is, but that voice that says, you can do it, Susan. You have got this, Mary. Come on, Sue. I know you can do it, that voice of the coach, all right? So there are all sorts of ways we can do that. We can remind ourselves of that teacher who saw us. We can remind ourselves of that Helen in the call centre who said, have you ever considered that you might actually be destined for a career in the arts? Or that teacher, that friend, that kind stranger on the tram or train. Or you can also just pretend it's Oprah Winfrey. Go on, Oprah Winfrey, Ryan Gosling, whoever it is. You got this, girl. I'll be your lighthouse in the storm. Play with this idea. Or you can just sit down in your bedroom and use music to turn on that voice, remind you of that voice of the inner champion, okay? That voice that is strong in you, that higher brain, that one that leaps our species forward with our ideas and our attachment to education and our claiming of our right to lifelong education, regardless of where we've come from. Okay, and yes, Emily, Helen does know I veered into the arts. She's not with us anymore, but yeah, she knew and she was bloody proud of me, and it makes me emotional thinking about it. So it's one of the easy things we can do is turn on and call in those inspiring songs. Now I've got a free playlist on Spotify, which is called the Inner Champion playlist. All right, the Inner Champion playlist. And you can listen to that if you like. I can't believe how quickly our time has gone together. We had an hour of power, and then it came to the end of our session nearly. All right, I'm going to sing with you now that song that I started writing, that one called Amazing Life. I'm going to take off my bangles, all right? So the Amazing Life song, and I'm just gonna, if anyone, you're welcome to come on screen if you want to say hi as I'm singing, and I'd love to encourage you to sing along with me. Many people feel that the voice of their inner critic comes loud when it comes to singing. They say, you can't sing. Guess what? I happen to know and have been teaching for 17 years that if you can speak, you can sing. And at the very least, you can mime. All right, so I'm teasing. I don't want you to mind me. But if you feel like humming along, please do, because your brain's actually really clever. So this song's called Amazing Life. Again, remember, if you got questions, type them in. I'm going to make a sound and then you make a sound too. You're on mute and I can't hear you, and that's good because there's latency issues, all right? Ooh. Very good again. Ooh. That's it. Thank you, Kylie, Diana. I can see you. Beautiful. Ooh. Your turn. Very good. One more time. Ooh. Your turn. Beautiful. Awesome. Shring da ling da do da. Your turn. Oh, sorry. You didn't catch that. Oh, right. Okay, I'll do that again. Oh, no. Yep. Okay, close. That's really good. Truth is, if you can speak, you can sing. If I say, hello, you say, hello. Very good. So you can modulate your voice and you just play with that, and I'm telling you, you'll be able to sing. Now I can see about 7 people. If the rest of you do want to turn on and sing along with us, or just go like that, or whip out your lighter, probably a bit early in the day really, isn't it? You want to write a novel, make beautiful music, act in the theater with inspiring humans, learn a language, run like the wind, help people fit in, travel to every country, make $1 million and smile when your children are babies, make the heart your home, inviting and warm. The words and lyrics are in the chat. You want an amazing life. You can't decide to think you have to be fully formed already, don't you? You want an amazing life. You can't decide. You don't have to be just one thing, but you have to start with something. So you'll be a little bit older by October. You've reneged on your age-old promises, and now you think this journey is over. People of the Lyndon Learning Festival. Just Wyndham, let me say something. I just got my words mixed up then. I called you the Lyndon Learning Festival. My sincere apologies. Just listen to this though, Wyndham Learning Festivals. You will feel it when it is over. You lasted 2020. Clearly it's not over, okay? And if you feel it is, just take a little time to be still and just listen to yourself for a while. You want this amazing life. You can't decide. You think you have to be fully formed already. You want an amazing life. You feel like you can't decide. Oh, you don't have to be just one thing, but you have to start with something. Have to be just one thing, but you have to start with something. And finding your voice, just start with taming your inner critic and just do one little tiny thing. And that's all you have to do, and that's where it starts, okay? Well done. I know you sounded amazing. I'm giving you a good old clap. I'm going to welcome back in my friend John, and I think we might have a little bit of a chance for some quizzes, and I can stay as long as needed, but you guys are on a tight timeline. So, John, I can't hear you, darling. Hi.
Hi, Claire. I think so. We've got a few questions in the chat already. I can see one from Roz that says, "Love you, Claire Bear."
Love you too, Roz.
What have you learnt of yourself from losing your mother? So that's a quite a personal question.
Go
So
straight there, shall we, Ross? No, it's a good question. Thank you. John, I'm just going to check in, and Diane and so on. I just want to check in. Do we have a few extra minutes here, or do we have to cut off at 3? Diane says,
we can keep going.
right. Okay, fantastic. So just I'm going to head straight into that. But before I do, I just want to give a shout out, because we did promise if anyone has to leave at 3, resource-wise, if you need some support around some of the stuff I was talking about today, I'll just remind you, the book was called Dr. Clare Week's Self-Help for Your Nerves, and that's a book. But always start with your GP, and start with somewhere also online, like the Black Dog Institute. They are fantastic, like Beyond Blue, they're fantastic for that mental health part. There's lots of youth services too, like Origin Youth and so on. And if your stuff is around your body, around food, eating, and stuff in that world, give Butterfly Foundation a call, because they've got a free helpline too, and they're really, really fantastic. There are lots and lots of resources available for you, and please be like me and keep reaching out, keep committing to learning about that.
And there's messages in the chat as well for people as well.
Thank you so much, Sean. And I'm going to talk about grief now for a second, just honestly, because like many of you, I know that I'm not the only one in this virtual room who lost someone that I loved during COVID. My mum was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer around this time last year, and it is a brutal disease. And she was someone that we expected to live to 100. She came in and recorded the audio in my audio book, the recipe for her apple tart the week she was diagnosed. Like, she's just, that was one of the bonuses in the audio book, just to have her voice there is so precious. And she was a strong and wild woman, and, devout woman of faith. But her cancer was cruel, and it took her really quickly. By March there's my son. I told him staying there till 3. Oh, he's popped out to say good day. I'm just talking about some personal adult things, Charlie. We've just had a year 12 graduate this year in our house, just last week. Thank you. And that's a 13-year-old. But, my mum was beloved. So what have I learnt? We lost her in COVID. So she went into hospital. We negotiated, as many of you have, that hospital situation where 1 visitor a day for 1 hour a day, then the total banning of all visitors when she moved into palliative care, and then the situation where that was just untenable. We needed a chance to say a proper goodbye and care for her. So we took her home, and I learnt some pretty practical things. She took her to her home. My sisters and I and my brother, we had the privilege of caring for her at home with the skill of palliative care nurses provided by the local council, who showed up for an hour or 2 every morning. They taught us how to do basic things like, change her driver and make sure she wasn't in pain. But from her, what I learnt was the role of patience, the way that her dedication to her spiritual life helped see her through her death. I learnt that we don't get to escape the hard bit. And I learned that even in lockdown, we can still reach out for help. And our loved ones, our house was full of flowers. So it's now nearly 4 months since we lost Mum, full of flowers and food. And that was people's way of showing us that they love them. So what did I learn? All of those things and many, many other things. And I think this is a learning that I'll be taking on. I learned that I can now speak about it without crying. That was, if you'd asked me this question even a month ago, I couldn't. I learned that we can survive grief. But yeah, everything I do now work-wise and with you guys, I'm trying to pay homage to my mum and the faith that she had in me and the kindness. Thanks for that question.
Thanks, Claire. Obviously, it's a tough first question. Really appreciate your open and honesty and ability to share yourself with us all.
Thank you.
Another question: what's a way to support older people who may fear transition and change now?
Great. Okay, so we've spoken about FOMO, but there's also that FOGO. That's a reality. The fear of missing out was what we used to know. Now we've got the fear of going out. Yeah. So I think one way that we can, or one way that I have with some of my friends who are older and really don't feel terrifically safe, is support them, be there with them, start with something small. If I think back to myself at my most vulnerable, for me, starting to get out of the house again was really about starting small, going to the post box and back, going to the corner and back, going around the corner and back. So if we're talking about supporting our loved ones who are older in getting out, then let's get in there and support them. Find something that they like doing. Always we're motivated, aren't we, by something that we're inspired towards. So maybe there is a book that they want from the library, or one of their favourite foods, or a favourite person they might need to see, or so on. But I think we've all got to be gentle with ourselves as we transition back into this face-to-face world. I'm actually quite overwhelmed a lot of the time. I find it quite convenient being able to do these things from the privacy of my own home. Someone told me to get on a plane the other day. I went, what? Plane? What? Get dressed. I got to dress my bottom half if I'm going to do that. So that's one way. But again, if it's about learning, then just tell them the example of in Canada. I used to work at the Museum of Anthropology there. I went and did my final year of Creative Bachelor of Arts, which is one of the things I was able to apply for because I used FOF, the F off Frank, the story that I was too old to learn or so on. I was only 21. I thought I was over the hill. Anyway, in Canada, they give free education to people who are 65 or over. So you get to go back to university for free in Canada when you're 65 or over. So I just encourage them to, and some of their best students. So encourage them that we need their wisdom. We actually need them out there in the world.
Thanks, Claire. That's really wise comments. Thank you. Now, your song "Amazing Life" really picks up on the theme of the Wyndham Learning Festival around the lifelong learning. And life must be really busy for you as a parent, a partner with a full career. I'm just interested to know personally, a question from me, what are you currently learning? What's new for you?
One of the things that I realised after, the experience of losing mum in August is that same week Tamia and the Critic, the audiobook came out, Audible podcast came out. People thought I was really busy. But I couldn't do any publicity. I couldn't do anything, and it went tremendously well. So I realized one of the things I'm learning is I don't need to do so much publicity for my things. It's better if I don't. They just go out in the world. They do quite well on their own. And I learnt there that, for me, I needed to just step out and be quiet for a while. And I taught myself how to knit. So that was really, really useful. But what I've been doing, I took about 6 weeks of knitting, cooking, and sitting in a rocking chair to really just get my head around what we'd just gone through, and the COVID funeral and COVID burial. And I know you know what I'm talking about. But I've actually been building some online learning platforms, and I don't know if I will ever launch them or not, but I needed a project that was non-emotional. It wasn't the writing of a book, which I've signed up to do, and it wasn't the making of songs, which I'm also signed up to do. Next year, I needed something practical. So I've been teaching myself platforms like Kajabi and Entreport, and I've been building two. One is an online workshop for people who don't think they can sing. So it's called If You Can Speak, You Can Sing. And the other one is a Big Hearted Business project, which is basically about teaching creative people how to make money in ways that are classy. So they're the two things that I've been learning and teaching myself, practical things where I can get there in the day and I can, pick some colours. And yep. I've been teaching myself Canva, which is a fantastic platform for anyone who wants to DIY graphic design. So anyway, they're just three of the things that I've been learning really around technology and so on. Do you like those ideas, guys? Just if you do, type in the comments. You can give me a bit of encouragement because I'm a bit overwhelmed by it all.
We'll wait to see those comments. A couple more questions, and I think we'll be able to wrap up. Now, this one is from Emma, and she says, "Hi Claire, your book came to me at the right moment during the first Melbourne lockdown, and I appreciate your honesty. I'm a primary school teacher. How do you suggest I support the promotion of positive body image in young children? What catchphrases could be used to encourage children, particularly girls, to love the body they are in?"
Yeah, love it. Okay, so Emma, thanks for that beautiful question. There is a wonderful pictures book, a children's book or a young book called Love Your Body. Do you know of that one? No. Okay, great. I learnt about it. I was sent a copy and I know it's orange. I'm looking in the orange section. I can't see it there. It's a stunning, beautiful book. I'm just going to see if I can find a copy of the cover. But really the focus is taking the focus always off around weight. We're not here to weigh a certain weight. We're here to enjoy our bodies. Our bodies are the house for our thoughts. I'm taking that emphasis off. Oh, don't you look gorgeous? You know, for me, a lot of my experience as a child who was, you know, really, here we go. Here's the cover. Here's the cover. You ready? Okay, here we go. It's called Love Your Body. All right. There we go. Great, fantastic book. Have a look at that. But it's really around language, taking that language off, our value equaling how we look in the world. Okay. We are worthy human beings. Number one, we're just born that way. All right. We don't have to prove it. And our actions, our esteemable actions make us feel esteemable inside. But a really important thing is teaching them that framework for understanding that it's not their fault. Okay, the world tells women again and again and again, and men increasingly, that our worth is about how we look and that we're not allowed to age, and that if we're big or if we're too small, whatever that is, that we're somehow done something wrong. We have not done anything wrong. We are here to live our lives, and we have the right to look however we want to look, actually. There's emphasis on taking care of ourselves and health and so on, but the health at every size framework is something very interesting for you to look at and have a little read around. So there's many, many resources. I'd also be reaching out to Butterfly Foundation and just asking them for their guidelines for that, because so much of our disordered eating and disordered thinking around food starts in that diet mentality, in that diet loop. So it's something that I hope to be able to offer more personally useful resources for at some point. But yeah, thank you, Emma. Thanks for touching on that.
Thanks, Claire.
Anytime, buddy.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Claire. And there's in the chat as well, Love Your Body is available at Wyndham Libraries, and there's a link there to that as well. Finally, I think that the last question, and you mentioned that you've been looking at a platform that is around people that don't think that they can sing. Is it true that they say everyone can sing? Is it true?
Absolutely. And this is not just me, the singer, who found it easy to sing speaking. This is a kid who, I loved singing. I really, really enjoyed it. And I had the good fortune of never having an adult, really not until later, say to me, can you please be quiet? Your voice is like, you're singing out of tune. Can you stand at the back? So many people are so wounded by the stories that they heard, reflected back to them from the society they lived in, from the adults who are in positions of power, who said you can't sing, or you sound like a drowning rat, or that hurtful comment that just got in, the way that comment to me about my weight, I was told I was too big as a kid, really got in there, and I ruminated over it. Basically, all of that aside, if you can speak, if you can modulate your voice like this, then can you speak like this, and you learn how to play with relaxing your throat and try little techniques like this and allow yourself to have the chance to sing the way you sing in the shower, the way you sing after the shandies, right? If you practice that and play with that, that is your singing ability. The fact that you taught yourself to speak shows that you have all the physiology there. You have everything anatomically to allow you to sing. The things that get in the way are, yes, some of our throats and our vocal cords are shaped differently, and some people find it easier to sing than others in tune, just like you might find it easier to run really fast than I do. I can still walk though, can't I? And I can work up a little schwalk, a little shuffle and walk, and then maybe I can get myself running. So it's a process for some of you. So absolutely, I think the science and my encouraging words there teach that if you can speak, you can sing. But I just want to mention, for years I've run these workshops. It's not just me saying it. I've run these sing-song showtime workshops where we in a day, I teach people who don't think they can sing that they can, and then we're performing 3-part harmony to a crowd of 100 of their family and friends at the end of the day. So it's not just yabba yabba. It's actually
Okay, that's good. I'll have to give it a go. I think I'm probably one of those people in that I can't sing category. So I'll have to take your advice there. Now, finally, I am going to sneak in one more, because there was one more from the audience, and I think Will would really like some advice here. Any resource suggestions from Will on finding one's own creative voice as a musician-songwriter?
Yes, okay. Will, I'm going to answer that in just one sec. I've just remembered that soon. I don't know if you guys are on my mailing list at clarebowditch.com. If you are, I'm going to announce this week that we're having Your Own Kind of Girl first birthday party. We're going to get together in a party like this on Zoom, and I'm going to give you the chance to get copies of my book that I signed for Christmas and all of that kind of stuff. It's probably the last time I'll be able to do that. So I just wanted to mention that quickly. Will, your question is, my darling, you're asking about how to, any resources for finding one's creative voice as a musician or songwriter. Well, there's a course that some of my mates have done. I mean, basically work out what you like and have a bit of a play. But sometimes we need frameworks to get us started. We can get quite stuck and overwhelmed. Firstly, you got to give yourself permission to be able to do it and remind yourself that you can do it. Many have done it before. You have the right to do it yourself. There's all sorts of books by Ken Robinson around finding your creativity. I'd suggest The Artist's Way is another really great book around finding your courage in creativity. And Big Magic is another one by Elizabeth Gilbert. You know, when someone writes a book that you know you were supposed to write and you get really jealous, that's that book for me, right? She wrote it, she beat me to it. But in terms of practical stuff for songwriting, there are a number of really great songwriting teachers. And I would suggest have a little peek at Berkeley Online College, Berkeley, just because a couple of my mates have done the songwriting course there. It's an online course, and I don't know what the cost is or the time requirement, but what you can always do is you look up who's the teacher there, and then just check out their YouTube and find out if you can get access to a couple of their exercises, okay? Because basically the way I write a song is I sit down with a feeling and I press record on a tape recorder. I do it a little bit like Dolly Parton wrote Jolene. You just kind of play something and then mumble something over the top, and then one word might pop out that makes sense, and then you build it around that. But other people need to start with the lyrics first or so on. So allow yourself the process to learn how you learn best. And don't be afraid to steal. You know, there are 4 chords in the truth, they say, Leonard Cohen used to say. So stealing wise, you're never going to plagiarize someone else, because I know already will, just by your name and your general way of asking questions, that you're a good person and you're not going to do that. But have a play. Learn those four chords. Look up Flight of the Conchords. Is it Flight of the Conchords? No, look up there's a comedy troupe called, I can't quite remember the name, but look up 4 chords on YouTube and you'll see them, this comedy troupe play 4 chords play but like 100 songs based on these 4 chords. So start there and have a play. All right.
Thanks, Claire. And
can I thank you, John, and thank you so much to the Wyndham Learning Festival for having me, Diane and Sharon and Jack and everyone who put in work to making this come together. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, not a problem. And look, I think we've got towards the end now. So all the questions have been wrapped up, and it's been great. We've been able to ask them all. So just from all of us, just a heartfelt thanks to you, Claire, for sharing so much of yourself with us today. It was a really great session, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And I can see people clapping along. As we've all mentioned, if anything that's been talked about today has raised issues for any members in our audiences, please talk to someone. And there are all of those links in the chat that we've mentioned today. Just a housekeeping at the end, we'd like to invite you to fill out a short survey to help us plan for next year's Learning Festival. We'll be sending that out in an email to you shortly. And we've also put a link in the chat if you'd like to complete it now. And if you'd like to keep in touch with future Learning Festival events or news, subscribe to our newsletter on the Learning Festival website or follow us on Facebook. See the links in the chat. So thank you to everyone for attending, and a special thanks to Claire. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Claire and this celebration and the value of singing, of storytelling, and the effect that it has on our social, physical and mental well-being. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. We'll have a look in the comments. Someone's put it was called Axis of Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you soon, and I'll see you on the interwebs.
Thanks so much, Claire.
Take care, everyone.